Okay, so welcome back. Today we're going to look at this laptop. It's an HP and it's a fairly inexpensive laptop. It's in the range of about 400 US dollars. And we're going to look at some of the features and specifications. And a lot of people, when they see these low-end laptops, they think, well, it's not powerful enough. I need lots of power and I need this and that. And we're going to kind of take an objective look at this and see, well, what features are really, really important and which really aren't that important or might not be that important. And if there are features missing, is there an easy way and an inexpensive way to upgrade, such as RAM, external connectors? Is there an easy way to upgrade? So we're going to see that, maybe some things that you think are really important might not be that important, and maybe a low-end, low-price laptop like this might be fine. You might have to spend a few dollars to get some upgrades, but it's really not that big a deal. So this is, like I say, it's about a $400 HP laptop. It's got a Ryzen processor. And if you look at the connectors, it's got a couple of USB connectors on one side. And on the other side, all it's got is like an HDMI and a USB-C. And then it's got a SD card. But really not a lot of external connectors. You might think, well, that's right, that's not good, I need more. This comes with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And we're going to see that there's some things about that you may not know about. So this is going to apply to not only this, but a lot of laptops in this range. So let's take a quick look at the specifications for this laptop. Now keep in mind, we're talking about the $400 to $500 US price range. So no matter what vendor or device, you're going to see very similar specifications for devices if you're looking in this price range. Basically, this is a HP 15-EF0021NR, unfortunate naming, but it's in the $400 to $500 US dollars. Right now you can get it for just over $400, I think. Display diagonally 15.6 inches. Processor AMD Ryzen 3, blah, 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 Radeon Vega mobile graphics. 2.6 gigahertz CPU with 4 logical processors. We're going to talk about that in a bit. Installed RAM, 8 gigabytes, which is nice. Generally, that's what I consider minimum for like a Windows machine. But we're going to see in a bit, maybe that's not right. Storage, 256 gigabyte SSD. And as we saw before, there's the ports for the headphone, SD card, HDMI, 2 USB-A, and 1 USB-C, which is the newer USB. Again, this is data transfer only. You're not going to be powering any devices from this USB-C port. It's only for data transfer. It's USB 3.1 Gen 1, which is 15 gigabits per second rating. So it's a high-speed port. Later generations, you can get much higher speed. Now, what you don't see here is, let's say your router at home has a RJ45 wired internet connector. And here you're going to be using Wi-Fi, but you're saying, the Wi-Fi is kind of slow. I wish I could hook up my router directly via wire to get a high-speed internet. Well, there is no RJ45 internet. However, we're going to talk in a bit about this USB-C, how you can do quite a bit with this USB to get more capabilities. We're also going to show you in this video how to upgrade the RAM from 8 to 16 gigabytes. And we're going to show you how to upgrade the availability of more ports. Again, here we've only got 2 USB-As, one for your mouse, and maybe you need a couple more. You've only got 2 here. So we're going to look at ways that you can upgrade this very inexpensively to get more I/O ports. So first thing I want to talk about is this processor. Now, there's a lot of folks in the hardware enthusiast community who are absolutely convinced that if I get a faster, more powerful CPU, that will make my computer faster. And that is pretty much a myth, especially in recent years. So let's talk about that. You can see here we've got an AMD Ryzen 3 3200, and it's 2.6 gigahertz with 4 logical processors. What does that tell you? First thing you may have noticed in recent years is that the speed of CPUs seems to have kind of flattened out. You don't really see CPUs at much more than about 4 gigahertz or maybe 4.5 gigahertz. There's a reason why CPUs have kind of leveled off at 4 or more gigahertz. And that is because the components that make up the CPU, the material, has reached the physical limit where you just can't get higher speeds on CPUs. So what they've done, since they can only go up to maybe 4 or 5 gigahertz, what they've done is they said, well, instead of increasing the speed, we're going to add logical processors. So what does that mean? Your CPU basically does operations in what's called in series or synchronously. What does that mean? Well, let's say I've got two equations that I want to solve for A and B. And A equals 2 times 3 plus 9, B equals A plus 5. Well, in order to solve this, I first need to calculate A, and then I can add that to 5 to get B. To calculate A, in the math world, you first have to do the multiplication, so you have to get 2 times 3, you have to figure that out, then add that to 9, and then once you've got the answer to A, you have to add that to 5. So that is calculations that need to be done in series or synchronously. Calculate 2 times 3 equals 6, add that result to 9 to get 15, and add result to 5 to get 20, and that way you've calculated A and B. But it requires that you do this step first, get the result, do this step, but this step relies on the previous, so you have to do these things in series, right? You can't do them simultaneously. It would be nice if you could do these simultaneously. It would be faster, right? If you had like 3 people working and one person is doing this, one person's doing that, one person's doing that. But the problem is you need to calculate this first before you can do this. So that's called series or synchronous operation. And that's what CPUs are really good at. What the manufacturers have said is, well, if I can only get up to like 4 gigahertz, what I will do is I will add more logical processors or cores which allow me to do things in parallel. So what does that mean? Well, that means, like we said, if you can do each one of these operations simultaneously, then you could speed this calculation up quickly. Now, in recent decades or recent years, the world has become graphics oriented. When it comes to computers, it's all about graphics. Everyone loves to play video games and they watch entertainment. They watch videos, cat videos and prank videos and those kinds of things. It's all about graphics. What we focus on now is ways to make graphics fast so people can have their fast video games. And the way they do that is they, instead of series or synchronous, they use parallel or asynchronous. So what does that mean? Well, here is an image, and the computer has to present that image to me. It has to draw this image on the monitor, in this case 60 times a second. Well, let's take a look at this image and zoom in on the top of this skyscraper here and see what this actually is. And if you zoom in, you can see it's these little squares, and these are called pixels. This image is composed of over 1 million pixels. The computer has to calculate the color of each of these pixels like 60 times a second, or however often it refreshes the picture. Or if you're playing a video game, you have to keep refreshing the picture. So the computer has to calculate one color for each pixel. And if you've got over 1 million pixels in your image, it would be nice if the computer could somehow calculate all of those pixels simultaneously. You didn't have to do something like this where you had to do one pixel, then the next pixel, then the next pixel. If you could calculate all of these pixels simultaneously, that would be really, really fast. Well, in the graphics world, to make this image, in general, you can do that. You can calculate many thousands of pixels simultaneously, and that's done by what's called a graphics processing unit, or a GPU. And that's why people have powerful GPUs, because they have thousands and thousands of processors. Each one can be working on one pixel. While that's nice, if I have a CPU with 4 processors, like on this laptop, that's not thousands and thousands of processors, right? That's not going to speed up your image very much because you've got 1 million pixels. Instead of 1, you've got 4 processors. That's not going to help you very much. So with a CPU, it's not going to do very well with graphics images because it's got very, very few processors. A GPU with thousands of processors that you spend $500 on is going to do a lot better. This is really going to be limited because it can only do things sequentially. People look at the processor and think, oh, well, I need the most powerful CPU. Well, no, it depends on what you're doing. Personally, I really don't care much about CPU ratings. Based on the stuff I do, my software most of my software does stuff in parallel, and the need for a powerful CPU, and we'll show this in a moment, the need for a powerful CPU is fairly limited. So let's look at an example. Here I am on my main computer, not my laptop, my desktop, and you can see my CPU is a Ryzen 8-core processor. And here is the visual depiction of all of the what are called logical processors, or 16. There are twice as many logical processors as there are the cores. So this CPU can do about 16 things simultaneously. Right now, this CPU has my Windows system going, and I am recording this video, and you can see that the CPU activity in all of these 16 processors is almost nothing, all right? So, I've got this 16 cores, but they're 90% of the time they're sitting around doing nothing, because a lot of it is being done by my GPU, and the CPU really isn't doing much. And this is the case much of the time. So personally, I don't think processors are really that important. Now, there are cases where you may need a CPU with many processors, but it depends on the software. All of this is driven by the software. What is the task it's doing? Is that something that you can put in multiple cores? So just keep that in mind when you're evaluating your laptop. So again, the processor, if you can get a 3 gigahertz, would you pay an extra $100 or something? Me, personally, I couldn't care less. Installed RAM. One thing I liked about this was it said 8 gigabytes of installed RAM, which, as I mentioned, for me is kind of the minimum on a Windows machine. However, just because it says 8 gigabytes doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have 8 gigabytes. Let's take a look at the actual numbers. So if I go into my system data on Windows for this laptop, it's got the device name, installed RAM, 8 gigabytes, and then in parentheses it says 5.92 gigabytes usable. And if I go into the task manager and look at the memory in Windows, you can see that is got 2 gigabytes in use, 3.9 gigabytes available. So if there's 2 in use and almost 4 available, that means there's only 6. There's not 8. Well, here's one of the issues that people don't think about. It's 8 gigabytes installed, 5.92 usable. If I start up my laptop with nothing running, here's the memory situation. It's using 2 and it's only got 4 remaining. It says 8 total, but down here it says 5.9 maximum. So what's going on? Well, you can see up here it's got a Radeon Vega mobile graphics. And one thing people don't realize is that your computer, if you have a graphics card, your computer, your CPU and RAM need to put together the data that goes to the graphics chip or the graphics card. And you need RAM in your computer that the CPU can work with to prepare all that data to send over to the graphics. So in some cases in Windows, what they do is they carve out a section of RAM solely to be used by the graphics card or the graphics chip and make that unusable to the user. Now, in some cases, you can modify that and say, hey, don't use all that. In this case, with this laptop, I don't think there's a way to change that. So right away, you're only at 6 gigabytes. Basically, I found that, you're going to use 4 gigabytes here real quick if you start anything up. So really, there's not a lot of headroom. Even though you've got 8 gigabytes, there's not a lot of headroom. So again, the spec monkeys think, well, if I have good specs, I've got a fast computer. Well, no, not necessarily. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to fairly simply upgrade the RAM on your laptop to give you 16, give you a little bit more headroom. So now one thing we mentioned is this laptop, and many laptops nowadays, do not have the RJ45 port to connect wired Ethernet to your router. However, don't sell the USB-C short, because you can get for $20, and I got one of these for my laptop, a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, RJ45 to USB-C. And you can see up here you get the USB-C and the RJ45. And this works great on my laptop. I've got one, and it gives you the benefit of the much higher speed than Wi-Fi of the wired internet. So that is certainly an option, inexpensive option if you want wired internet. Now, another thing you can do that shows the versatility of this USB-C is you can find something like this for about twice the price, which not only gives you RJ45, but it gives you, in this case, an additional 3 USB-A ports, HDMIs, if you want more SD card ports. So really, you can get different variations. There's many vendors out there that sell different versions of this with whatever you need for I/O ports. Again, the USB-C is something new, and it has a lot of versatility and very high speed. Again, you got to be careful because some of these USB-C I/O ports don't allow you to power other devices. So you got to be careful with that. Otherwise, they're very versatile and usable. So next, we're going to show you how to upgrade the RAM on a laptop like this. Now, keep in mind that we are presently in an age where there are many issues with electronic components. There are what are called supply chain issues. They just can't get the components in stock. Apparently people don't want to work, so they have resource issues. So keep in mind that you got to be patient nowadays when you're ordering electronic components. So what I do is I generally go to Crucial.com. I've been using Crucial for many years. Really nice because they can verify that their memory is compatible with your device. So I just looked up HP 15EF models, and it says we have compatible memories. What I did is I found for mine at Crucial.com, they've got for only, here we have $32, 8 gigabytes of DDR4 for my computer. We're going to show you how to do that with this 16 gigs of RAM on this laptop. And really the procedure is very similar for, I think, most laptops in this price range. So now with this laptop, it had 8 gigabytes of RAM. I added one 8 gig stick. And really it's not that difficult. I think in the next video we'll show you the details of how to do it. But basically just flip it over. You've got to remove these rubber feet. And then there's a couple more screws here, and then 2 screws under these rubber feet. You just unscrew it. The challenging thing is that you have to pry. You need to get a thin piece of metal, something that's fairly strong, and you need to take this plastic and you need to pull it out a little bit and pry it out. So we'll show you how to do that in the next video, but really not that bad if you're worrying about it. Okay, so here we are, just fired up the laptop after the installation. We're going to right click on Task Manager, and under Performance, click on Memory, and you can see over here on the right, 16 gigabytes. Great, so it recognizes our RAM. It says there's a total 13.9 gigabytes available, and you can see in use 2.4 gigabytes. And over here you can see 2 of 2 slots used, so everything's okay. Still, we have 2.1 gigabytes of hardware reserved based on our onboard graphics processor, but not a heck of a lot we can do about it. But at least now we have some headroom, 14 gigabytes usable with our laptop. Okay, so I think that's about it for this one. Maybe in the next video we'll show you the details of how to install that second stick of RAM. Otherwise, if you like any of these videos, I encourage you to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, and most of all, please let others know that we're here so we get some views. Really appreciate it. Otherwise, take care. Have a really good day. Thanks.